They tell you in training that empathy is a liability, that the moment you see the target as human as someone's daughter, someone's mother, someone who laughs at bad jokes or cries at old songs, you've already lost. I nodded along in those sterile briefing rooms in Langley, took notes in margins I'd later burn, and believed I understood the cost of this work. I didn't understand a goddamn thing. My name is irrelevant now. The man who carried it died on a rain-soaked night in Vladivostok, and what walks around in his skin is something else entirely, a ghost, a traitor, a fool in love, depending on who you ask. For 16 years, I served the Central Intelligence Agency with distinction. I ran assets across 3 continents, dismantled a trafficking network in Moldova, prevented what would have been a catastrophic intelligence breach in Istanbul. My record was spotless. My loyalty, unquestioned. Until I looked into the eyes of a 26-year-old North Korean woman everyone called the enemy, and saw reflected back something I'd spent my entire career trying to suppress, the understanding that some lives matter more than the mission, that some people are worth burning your entire world down for. This is not a love story, though love strange, impossible, world-ending love sits at its rotten core. This is a confession. An autopsy of the moment when duty and conscience finally tore me apart. And I chose the side that would make me a fugitive forever. Her name was Min Ji-yeon. And saving her cost me everything. It was worth it. Every single goddamn time. It was worth it. November rain in Seoul has a particular quality cold and insistent. The kind that seeps through your jacket and settles in your bones. I stood outside the safe house in Itaewon, watching water cascade off the narrow awning, cooling in the cracks of the alley where streetlight couldn't reach. Inside, she was waiting. The defector. The prize. The woman whose testimony could reshape the intelligence landscape of Northeast Asia and deliver a propaganda victory Washington had been salivating over for months. Asset designation. Songbird. Real name. Min Ji-yeon. Crime. Being born in the wrong country. I'd been running Korean operations for 3 years, by then long enough to speak the language with Seoul's sharp edges, long enough to know which neighborhoods the DPRK sleeper agents favored, long enough to have seen a dozen defectors processed through the system. Each one arrived traumatized, disoriented, clutching at the possibility of freedom like a drowning person clutches debris. We'd debrief them, extract what intelligence value they possessed, then hand them off to the South Korean authorities for resettlement. Most disappeared into the anonymous sprawl of the city, taking factory jobs or restaurant work, trying to forget the country that had tried to forget them first. But Ji-yeon was different. Ji-yeon was the daughter of a high-ranking official in the Reconnaissance General Bureau, North Korea's premier intelligence agency. She'd grown up inside the machinery of state secrecy, educated in languages and computing, groomed for a role in the regime's cyber warfare division. Then, 6 months ago, her father fell out of favor. A factional purge, the kind that happens in Pyongyang with brutal regularity. He was arrested, tried in a closed military tribunal, and executed within 48 hours. Ji-yeon ran before they could take her too. She'd crossed the Tumen River into China at night, made contact with a broker in Yanji, then traveled through an underground railroad of safe houses and bribes until she reached the South Korean embassy in Bangkok. The moment she requested asylum, every intelligence service with interests in the peninsula sat up and took notice. The daughter of a RGB colonel, intimately familiar with operational protocols, network structures, encryption methods, she was an intelligence windfall wrapped in a humanitarian crisis. State wanted her for propaganda. The Pentagon wanted her for operational intelligence. The agency wanted her for all of it. I wanted nothing to do with her, not because I didn't understand her value. I did. But 3 years of running assets had taught me something that training never covered. The ones who matter most, the ones carrying the most valuable secrets, are also the most damaged. And damaged assets are unpredictable. They crack under pressure. They recant. They self-destruct in ways that take entire operations down with them. But my station chief had been clear. She's yours, Garrett. Build rapport, extract everything she knows, and get her ready for the congressional testimony in 3 months. This is career-making work. So I went. I knocked 3 measured raps and waited. The door opened 6 inches, security, chain still engaged. A fragment of a face appeared in the gap, one dark eye, sharp and afraid, scanning me with predatory focus. The face of someone who'd learned early that trust was a luxury that got people killed. Min Ji-yeon? I said in Korean, keeping my voice level, non-threatening. My name is Michael. I'm with the American Embassy. I'm here to help you. The eye studied me for 3 long seconds. Then the door closed, the chain rattled, and it opened fully. She was smaller than I'd expected, maybe 5'3", slight build, dressed in an oversized sweatshirt and jeans that had been donated by some NGO. Her hair was cut bluntly at her shoulders, unwashed, and her skin had the pallor of someone who'd spent weeks indoors, hiding. But it was her eyes that hit me first, exhausted and ancient, carrying the weight of things no 26-year-old should have witnessed. "You're late," she said in English, her accent thick but precise. "They said you would come at 7. It's 7:15. Traffic," I lied. Because the truth, that I'd sat in my car for 10 minutes, building up the will to do this, wasn't something I could admit. She stepped aside, and I entered. The safe house was standard small, anonymous, the furniture generic and soulless. A single window overlooked the alley, curtains drawn. A kitchen area with appliances that probably hadn't been used in months. A door leading to what I assumed was a bedroom. On the low table in the center of the room sat a cheap laptop, closed, and a stack of documents in Korean that looked like intelligence briefings. She sat on the edge of the couch, hands folded in her lap with almost military precision, waiting for me to begin. To take from her what everyone else had already taken. I sat across from her, leaving space, trying to project something other than the predatory extraction she'd been subjected to since arriving in the South. "I know you've been through this process many times already," I began. "Debriefings, medical evaluations, psychological assessments. I'm not here to put you through it again tonight. I just want to talk. Get to know you." Her expression didn't change. "You want to know if I'm reliable, if I'll be useful, if I'm worth the resources your government is spending to keep me alive." Christ. She wasn't wrong. "I want to know how you're doing," I said, which was partially true. "This is a lot. Most people in your position, most people in my position are dead," she interrupted, her voice flat. "My father is dead. My mother disappeared into a camp when I was 13. My brother..." She stopped, jaw tightening. "I don't have a position. I have this room, and I have you, and I have the understanding that if I don't give you what you want, I become useless." The silence that followed was heavy enough to suffocate in. "That's not how this works," I said quietly. "Isn't it?" I wanted to argue, to feed her the line about humanitarian concern, about how we cared about her well-being, about how she wasn't just an asset. But I'd been in this business long enough to know that platitudes are just another form of manipulation, and she was too smart to fall for them. So I told her the truth. "You're right. There are people in my government who see you as an intelligence product, a data point, something to be extracted and utilized. But that's not everyone. And it's not me. I'm here because my job is to help you navigate this, the debriefings, the resettlement, the testimony, to make sure you don't get chewed up by a system that doesn't always know how to handle people, only information." She studied me, and for the first time, something shifted behind her eyes. Not trust, not yet, but maybe the possibility of it. "Why should I believe you?" she asked. "You shouldn't," I said. "Not yet. But over the next few weeks, I'm hoping to earn it." She almost smiled, almost. "You'll be disappointed," she said. "I don't trust easily." "Good," I replied. "Neither do I." The debriefings began the next day. We met in that same safe house, 3 times a week at first, then daily as we built momentum. I'd arrive with coffee, she liked it sweet, with too much cream, and we'd sit across from each other like chess players, each trying to understand the other's strategy. In the beginning, she gave me only surface details. organizational charts, names of officials she'd met at state functions, technical specifications of software systems she'd worked on. Useful, but not revelatory. She was testing me, seeing how I'd react, whether I'd push when she held back. I didn't push. Instead, I let the silences breathe. I asked about her childhood, her schooling, the small moments that didn't seem operationally relevant, but painted the picture of who she'd been before the world demanded she become someone else. Slowly, so slowly, I almost didn't notice it happening. She began to relax. She told me about growing up in Pyongyang, in one of the elite neighborhoods where the children of party officials live insulated lives of relative privilege. She'd attended the best schools, learned English and Chinese, studied classical piano. Her father had been strict but loving, a man who believed in the revolution, but also in protecting his family within it. He used to bring me books, she said one afternoon, rain drumming against the window. Foreign books, smuggled from China. Jane Austen, Hemingway, even some South Korean poetry. He'd tell me, know the enemy, Ji-yan. Understand how they think. But I think he just wanted me to see that there was more to the world than what they taught us. Did it work? I asked. She looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something fragile behind the armor. Yes, she whispered. And that's why I'm here. Somewhere in the third week. The dynamic shifted. It happened during a session where we were reviewing her knowledge of RGB, operational protocols in Southeast Asia. She was explaining a network of front companies in Malaysia when she suddenly stopped mid-sentence, staring at the document in her hands. What is it? I asked. This network, she said slowly. It's still active. These accounts, these shell corporations, they're being used right now to funnel currency and components for the missile program. I leaned forward. Are you certain? Yes. I helped set up some of these accounts before I left. They wouldn't shut them down. They're too valuable. This was exactly the kind of actionable intelligence Washington craved. I should have immediately reported it up the chain, triggered operational planning, set the machinery in motion. Instead, I found myself asking, if we act on this information, will it put anyone you know in danger? She looked up sharply, surprised by the question. There's a woman, she said quietly. Kim Sung-hee. She worked in the accounting division. She has a daughter. If they suspect a leak from the Malaysia network, they'll interrogate everyone connected to it. Then we'll be careful, I said. We'll make it look like it came from another source. I watched her absorb this, saw the way her shoulders dropped slightly, some invisible weight lifting. Why do you care? She asked. Because I'm starting to see you as a person, not an asset, I thought. Because somewhere along the way, this stopped being an assignment and became something I don't have a name for yet. Because good intelligence work doesn't require collateral damage. I said instead, it was a lie. Good intelligence work was built on collateral damage. But it was a lie she needed to hear, and I needed to believe. By week 6. I'd broken every rule in the handler's playbook. I'd started bringing her books novels she mentioned wanting to read. Korean poetry collections I found in used bookshops in Gangnam. I'd extended our sessions, not because we needed the time operationally, but because neither of us seemed ready to leave. I'd learned that she hummed when she was nervous, that she had a scar on her left hand from a childhood accident with a kitchen knife, that she missed snow more than anything else about the North. I'd learned the exact shade of amber. Her eyes turned when she laughed, and I was laughing more too. Somewhere between the debriefings and the intelligence reports, we'd started sharing stories that had nothing to do with the work. I told her about growing up in Oregon, about my mother who taught elementary school, about the year I spent backpacking through South America before joining the agency. She told me about sneaking onto the roof of her apartment building in Pyongyang to watch the stars, about the secret phone she'd kept hidden for 2 years, about the night she decided that survival meant betrayal. Do you regret it? I asked one evening. Leaving? She was quiet for a long time, staring into her coffee cup like it held answers. I regret that I had to, she finally said. I regret that loyalty to my father meant disloyalty to myself. I regret that the place I called home was a prison I couldn't see the bars of until I was already outside. She looked up. But no, I don't regret leaving. I regret what it cost. What did it cost? Everything, she whispered. Everyone. I had a friend, Haniel. We grew up together. She was going to be a doctor. When I left, they would have interrogated her. Her family. Anyone I'd ever spoken to. The regime doesn't forgive defection. It punishes it by making everyone you loved pay the price. I wanted to tell her it wasn't her fault, that she couldn't sacrifice herself for a system designed to devour people. But I'd seen enough agency operations to know that guilt doesn't care about logic. You survived, I said. That matters, does it? Her voice cracked slightly. Some days I think death would have been easier. At least then I wouldn't have to carry this. I did something I'd never done with an asset before. I reached across the table and took her hand. She didn't pull away. You carry it because you're strong enough too, I said. And you don't have to carry it alone. Her eyes met mine, and in that moment, everything changed. We both knew it. Neither of us said it. The cable from Langley arrived on a Tuesday. I was in my apartment, a nondescript unit in Mapoju that smelled like instant coffee and old surveillance reports when my encrypted phone buzzed. The message was brief, clinical, devastating. Effective immediately. Asset Songbird, Min Ji-on, is to be prepared for Phase 2 deployment. Timeline accelerated due to Intel breakthrough RGB cyber operations. Congressional testimony moved to 3 weeks. Additional interrogation protocols authorized. Asset to be transferred to secure facility in Virginia for enhanced debriefing. Extraction scheduled the 22nd of November. Confirm receipt and compliance. I read it 3 times. Enhanced debriefing. That was agency speak for intensive, aggressive extraction, the kind where sleep deprivation, isolation, and psychological pressure were all tools in the toolbox. They wanted everything she knew, and they wanted it fast, and they didn't particularly care what state she was in when they were done. And congressional testimony in 3 weeks. They were going to parade her in front of cameras, make her recount every trauma, every loss, every secret, while politicians used her pain to score points. Then they'd stick her in a resettlement program somewhere in Middle America and forget she existed. I'd seen it happen before. Assets used up and discarded, left to navigate PTSD and cultural dislocation with nothing but a stipend and a handler who stopped returning calls. I couldn't let it happen to her. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. I wasn't going to comply. Somewhere in the past 6 weeks, she'd stopped being Songbird and become Ji-on. Somewhere in the shared silences and the careful trust we'd built, I'd crossed a line I didn't even know I was approaching. I'd started caring more about her survival than I cared about the mission, than I cared about my career, than I cared about anything. I was compromised, and I didn't care. I stared at the phone for 10 minutes, mind racing through scenarios. If I reported the cable and proceeded with the extraction, she'd be on a plane to Virginia in 72 hours. If I delayed, I'd buy maybe a week before they sent someone else. If I told her, I'd be violating operational security and potentially endangering both of us. If I ran with her, I'd be committing treason. The words sat in my mind like a stone. Treason. Betrayal of the country I'd sworn to serve. The country that had trained me, trusted me, given me purpose. But what was I betraying, really? A system that saw people as products? A machine that chewed up defectors and spat them out traumatized and broken? Or was I betraying something deeper, the illusion that my loyalty to an institution mattered more than my loyalty to a single human life? I thought about my father, who'd served in Vietnam and come back with nightmares he never spoke about. I thought about the moment he told me, years before he died, that the hardest part wasn't the combat, it was coming home and realizing the war had been built on lies. You can serve a flag, or you can serve people, he'd said. But sometimes you can't do both. I made my decision. I met Ji-on the next morning at the safe house, acting as though nothing had changed. We went through the motions of a normal session reviewing technical details about RGB communication protocols. discussing potential testimony talking points. But my mind was elsewhere, calculating logistics, running through contingencies. When we finished, I didn't leave. Ji-yeon, I said carefully, I need to talk to you about something. Something that isn't part of the official process. She tensed immediately, reading the shift in my tone. What is it? My government wants to move you. Transfer you to the United States for enhanced debriefing and congressional testimony. It's happening in 3 days. Her face went pale. Enhanced debriefing? Yes, that means interrogation. Isolation. Her voice was hollow. I've seen how my government treats defectors from the South. I imagine yours isn't so different. It's not torture, I said, though the words felt weak. But it's not gentle either. She stood abruptly, moving to the window, arms wrapped around herself. So this is it. I trade one cage for another. No, I said, and the word came out harder than I intended. That's not the only option. She turned, eyes sharp with sudden focus. What do you mean? This was the moment. The cliff edge. Once I said the words, there was no walking them back. I mean, I can get you out. Away from my government, away from the South Korean intelligence service, somewhere they won't find you. It would be dangerous, and there'd be no going back, but you'd be free. The silence stretched between us like a living thing. Why would you do that? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Because I'm in love with you, I thought. Because the idea of them breaking you apart for information makes me want to burn the whole system down. Because for the first time in my career, I'm seeing clearly what I've been doing, treating people like data points. Extracting value and discarding the rest, and I can't stomach it anymore. Because it's the right thing to do, I said. She crossed the room, stopped directly in front of me, close enough that I could smell the faint scent of soap and something else, fear. Maybe, or hope. If you do this, they'll destroy you, she said. Your career, your life. You'll be a fugitive. I know. Why? I met her eyes, and for once, I didn't hide behind professional distance or operational necessity. Because you matter more, I said simply. Her hand came up, fingertips brushing my jaw with heartbreaking gentleness. You're a fool, she whispered. Probably. When do we leave? We left Seoul at 3 a.m. on a Thursday, driving a rented Hyundai with stolen plates toward Busan. I'd wiped my agency phone, left it in my apartment next to a half-written report and a bottle of whiskey, evidence of a breakdown. Maybe, or a man who'd cracked under pressure. Let them construct whatever narrative they wanted. Ji-yeon sat in the passenger seat, a small bag of belongings at her feet, staring out at the highway, unwinding in the dark. We didn't speak much. The weight of what we were doing, the magnitude of the betrayal, the impossibility of the odds, sat between us like a third passenger. I'd spent the previous day liquidating everything I could, draining bank accounts, calling in favors from contacts who didn't ask questions, purchasing fake documentation from a forger in Itaewon who'd done work for the agency before and knew better than to talk. We had maybe 36 hours before someone noticed Ji-yeon was missing. Another 12 before they connected it to me. The plan was desperate and thin. Get to Busan, board a cargo ship I'd arranged through a maritime contact, and disappear into Southeast Asia. From there, we'd work our way west Thailand, maybe, or Vietnam, places where American intelligence had presence, but not omniscience. Places where we could vanish into the chaos of expat communities and black market documentation. It wasn't a good plan, but it was the only one we had. We reached Busan as dawn broke over the harbor, painting the industrial waterfront in shades of rust and gold. The city was waking up, dock workers heading to shifts, fishing boats returning with night catches, the smell of diesel and saltwater heavy in the air. I parked 3 blocks from the harbor, and we walked the rest of the way. That one, I said, nodding toward a mid-sized container ship with Korean markings. The captain's name is Park. He thinks we're journalists running from a story that went bad. He doesn't care as long as the money clears. Ji-yeon looked at the ship, then at me. Once we get on that boat, there's no changing our minds. I know. You'll never be able to go home. I know that too. She took my hand, squeezed it once. Then let's go. We were 20 meters from the gangway when I heard the voice. Michael. I froze. Station Chief Davis stood at the edge of the dock, flanked by 2 Korean NI's agents. He looked tired, disappointed, but not surprised. Like he'd been expecting this, hoping against hope I'd prove him wrong. Don't make this harder than it has to be, Davis said calmly. She's a valuable asset. You know we can't just let her disappear. My hand moved to the pistol concealed under my jacket, a Glock 19. I'd checked out from the agency armory 3 months ago and never returned. Standard fieldwork precaution. Now it was the only thing standing between Ji-yeon and rendition. She's not an asset, I said, voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding my system. She's a person, and I'm not letting you take her. Davis sighed, the sound of a man watching a career collapse in real time. You've been compromised, Michael. Emotionally involved with an asset. It happens, but this isn't the way to handle it. Come back with us. We'll get you help, counseling, leave of absence. But if you get on that ship, you're committing treason. There's no coming back from that. I know, I said. I'm making my choice. She's North Korean intelligence, Davis pressed. Everything she's told you could be a lie. Have you considered that? That she's playing you? I felt Ji-yeon tense beside me, but I didn't look away from Davis. I've considered everything, I said. And I'm still choosing this. One of the NIS agents moved slightly, hand drifting toward his weapon. The geometry of the situation was clear. I was outnumbered, outgunned, and out of options. If I drew my weapon, people would die. Maybe me, maybe Ji-yeon, maybe all of us . But if I surrendered, she'd disappear into the system, and I'd spend the rest of my life wondering if I could have saved her. Sometimes there are no good choices. Only choices you can live with and choices you can't. I drew the Glock. Michael, don't, Davis started. We're getting on that ship, I said quietly. And you're going to let us. Because if you don't, this gets messy. And messy creates witnesses and media attention, and all the things the agency hates. Let us go. File your report. Say, I went rogue. But let us go. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Davis shook his head slowly. You're throwing away everything for a woman you've known 6 weeks. No, I said. I'm saving her from being thrown away by a system that treats people like resources. There's a difference. Davis looked at me, and something in his expression shifted, not approval exactly, but maybe understanding. He'd been in this business 30 years. He'd seen what it did to people. He raised a hand, stopping the NIS agents from advancing. Get on the ship, he said quietly. You've got 5 minutes before I call it in. After that, you're on every watch list from here to Moscow. And Michael? Don't ever come back. I won't, I said. We walked up the gangway, and I didn't look back. We spent 6 weeks on that cargo ship, hidden in a retrofitted container that smelled like oil and rust. The crew mostly ignored us, focused on their own work and happy to pretend we didn't exist. We ate bland meals, read smuggled books by flashlight, and talked in the darkness about futures we weren't sure we'd live to see. What will you do? Ji-yeon asked one night, lying next to me on a thin mattress, the sound of ocean all around us. After this, when we stop running. I don't know, I admitted. I've been with the agency so long, I'm not sure who I am without it. You're the man who gave up everything to save someone, she said softly. That's not nothing. It's not enough to build a life on. Maybe not, but it's enough to start. We made landfall in Ho Chi Minh City in late December. Vietnam chaotic, vibrant, indifferent to the dramas of American intelligence. We rented a small apartment in District 1 under false names, paid in cash, and began the slow process of building a life from nothing. I found work teaching English to businessmen. Ji-yeon used her technical skills to do freelance coding, remote work that asked no questions about credentials. We lived quietly, carefully, always watching for shadows that moved wrong, or faces that lingered too long. The first year was the hardest. Every police siren sent my heart racing. Every knock on the door felt like the end. I dreamed about Davis, about Langley, about the life I'd walked away from. I woke up gasping, certain I'd made a terrible mistake. But then I'd look at Ji-yeon sleeping peacefully, or making coffee in the morning light, or laughing at some Korean comedy show on her laptop. And I knew I'd do it again. Every single time. It's been 4 years now. We live in Chiang Mai these days, Thailand's northern mountains, where the air smells like jasmine and wood smoke. We have a small house with a garden where Ji-yeon grows vegetables and flowers. She's learning to paint watercolors, mostly landscapes that capture the light in ways I'll never understand. I still teach English. She still codes. We have friends now, other expats, local families, people who know us by names that aren't our own and don't ask about the past. Sometimes I think about what I left behind. The career, the purpose, the identity I'd built over 16 years. I wonder if Davis retired, or if they forced him out for letting us go. I wonder if anyone remembers Michael Garrett, the handler who went rogue, or if I'm just a footnote in some classified report. A cautionary tale they tell new recruits about the dangers of emotional compromise. I wonder. But I don't regret, because every morning, I wake up next to a woman who's alive, who's free, who's building a self that wasn't dictated by trauma, or systems or countries that wanted to use her up. Every day, we choose each other again. Not because we're running anymore, but because we want to. Last month, Ji-yeon started volunteering with a refugee support organization, helping North Korean defectors navigate resettlement in Thailand. She comes home exhausted, carrying other people's pain, but also lit up with purpose. I can't save everyone, she told me last night, sitting on our porch, watching the sun set over the mountains. But I can help some. I can be the person I needed when I was running. You're extraordinary, I said, and meant it. She smiled, that rare, beautiful smile that still catches me off guard. We both are, she said. We did an impossible thing. We survived. More than that. We chose love over fear, hope over duty. She took my hand. That's revolutionary. They teach you in training that empathy is a liability, that attachment makes you weak, that the mission always comes first, that individuals don't matter against the machinery of nations. They're wrong. The mission I abandoned was built on the idea that some people exist to be used, that their trauma, their knowledge, their very existence is valuable only insofar as it serves intelligence priorities. That thinking turns humans into assets, lives into data points, suffering into strategic advantage. I couldn't do it anymore. Not to her. Not once I looked into Jean's eyes and saw reflected back the truth I'd been avoiding, that every asset has a story. Every defector is someone's daughter. Every intelligence prize is a human being who deserves more than to be extracted and discarded. So I ran. I chose treason over complicity. I chose one life over national interest. And in the quiet moments, when the sun streams through our kitchen window and Ji-yeon hums while cooking dinner, when we take walks through night markets holding hands like regular people, when we wake up safe and together in a home we built from nothing, I know I made the right choice. They can call me a traitor. They can put me on watch lists and burn my name from the records. They can teach new recruits about the handler who went rogue as a warning about weakness. But they can't take this from me. The knowledge that I looked into the machinery of my own government and decided that one woman's freedom mattered more. That love, messy, impossible, world-breaking love is a better compass than duty. That some people are worth saving, even when the whole world calls them the enemy. Her name is Min Ji-yeon. She is the woman I betrayed my country for. And she is the reason I finally understand what it means to be free. Sometimes the right choice is the treasonous one. Sometimes saving one life is worth burning down your entire world. And sometimes, in the space between duty and conscience, you find the only thing that ever really mattered. The courage to choose love when everything demands you choose power.